Praise be Jesus Christ, and thank you for joining me for Lectio on the Go, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our readings are taken from 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 through 10, and the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verses 11 through 16. These are the readings for a widow, and this is particularly for Saint Monica. I think I may have mentioned this before in Lectio on the Go, but I like how there's different categories, and readings fit those categories. For instance, a confessor, someone that is willing to live and particularly die for the faith, a martyr, a doctor, a bishop, holy men, holy women, and then a particular category for a widow. Saint Monica was a great woman. She is the mother of Saint Augustine. She prayed and fasted for her son's conversion, and finally, after many years of prayer, her son did convert to the faith, becoming one of our greatest saints and a doctor of the Church. So I want to focus first on the Gospel reading, and it says, this is the story in which Jesus raises the son of a widow. So I believe that's why it's, of course, connected with Saint Monica, the care that God has for the vulnerable. A widow, scripturally, is someone that has no one else left to take care of her. So, of course, she doesn't have her husband there to take care of her. She doesn't have her father still alive to take care of her, and she doesn't have any of her children there to take care of her. So she is completely vulnerable, and God shows special care. He also asks the Christian community to show special care always to widows and orphans. This is one of our greatest signs of charity, is to care for the widow and to care for the orphan. And so in this reading in Luke, we see that Jesus himself has pity and compassion for a widow, and he raises her son. And it just simply says, and he that was dead sat up and began to speak. So knowing that this woman would have a difficult time, Jesus performs this amazing miracle where this man was being brought to the cemetery. He was dead. He was on the basically being carried out on the wagon, so to speak. And Jesus just simply touches that carrier, that pall, and he arises. And now that this woman is also going to of course, be taken care of because of this. So the care of our family is extremely important. And what in 1 Timothy we read that the care of our family, those entrusted to us, is so important. It's integral to being a faithful person. And it makes actually the distinction between whether you're a person of faith or you're an infidel. Infidel, fide, right? Infidel, if you look at that word, fide means faith. So infidel means someone that is not faithful or an unbeliever. So there's two categories, those that believe, of course, and those that do not believe. You've probably heard someone ask, are you a believer? This would be the same thing as saying, are you a faithful person? And if you're not faithful, then are you infidel? So this is very important. So integral to the faith are our actions. We can't just believe, but we have to believe and act. We have to be doers of the word, not just believe, but believe and act, because we are people of an intellect and also a will. And so faith demands the assent of our intellect. Yes, I believe because it's been revealed, but I also will do this. So it's an act of the will and an act of the intellect. This is what faith demands of us. But if any man have not care of his own, and especially those of his house, he hath denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel. So in this case, worse than an unfaithful person. So we can't just say, oh, I'm a faithful person. There actually has to be some action behind that, intellect and will. If any man have not care of his own. There's a lot of people under our care. If you have people working for you, they are under your care. They are your own. So there's a lot of people in our circles under our care, but especially those of our household. Those that are in our house, our family members, especially our immediate family. Me as a father, those that are in my care, my children, as a husband, my wife. These are the people that, especially if I don't care for them, doesn't matter what else I'm doing. Doesn't matter what else I'm doing. If I don't care for them, I am worse than an unfaithful person. I have abandoned the faith through my own actions. So this is very important. Now, Garensway, Abbot Garensway, who I like to read a lot, he has a great 15-volume set called the Liturgical Year. And he wrote about 200 years ago in the 1800s, and he talks about how as a culture, even in his time, 200 years ago, there is this abandoning of the faith altogether. So if I abandon the faith, what I've really have done is I've abandoned a standard. Faith becomes a standard of what is believed, but a standard also of according to what we act upon. So I want to say that again. Faith becomes our ruler, our measurement, our standard. If we don't have any type of degrees anymore, right now as I'm recording this, it's 94 degrees Fahrenheit, right? How do I know that? Because there is a standard. There is a degrees that we use to base Fahrenheit off of. With anything, we base things off a certain rule or standard. Faith is the rule of morality. Faith is the rule of actually truth. So faith at its central is that we believe things because they are revealed. Who are they revealed by? God. How are they revealed by God? Through Jesus Christ, who is God, and Jesus Christ, who established a church. And so faith is very concrete, ruler, and we can judge everything off of faith. Faith, again, is a matter of intellect, what is believed, but it's also a moral code. What has been taught, then we act accordingly. That's why if you don't care for those that are in your own household, then you cannot say you're faithful. You can't be a faithful person and abandon those that are even under your direct care. So Abbot Guernsway talks about rationalism and naturalism. And I want to read, you can read the notes here, of course, that are posted here. But I want to walk through a few of these because this was a problem and still is a problem. 200 years this has been going on. 200 years. A complete abandonment. Rationalism is reason alone. Only what is reasonable. So again, let's read from the gospel. And he that was dead, right? A young man here that was dead, the son of this woman that was dead, sat up and began to speak. That is not reasonable. So anything that's not reasonable, then I do not believe. So reason alone, if it doesn't make sense, if I can't reason it through, then discard it, which would be the miracles of Jesus Christ, which would be the whole teaching that God become man. That doesn't seem reasonable that God would become man. And it may even, to take it a little bit farther, not even be reasonable that there's a God. Anything that doesn't fit my reason then, or the reason of the majority, is tossed out, and then reason alone becomes the standard, not faith. Reason is very subjective because what could be reasonable to one person may not seem reasonable to another. You can see how reason then is dependent on each individual person, whereas faith is dependent on what's actually revealed from God. Okay? So, talking about that revelation, under rationalism, revelation is a complete forgery. It's a complete lie. It is something made up. Divine revelation, Old Testament, New Testament, teachings of the church, all the stories of Jesus, the gospel, the accounts of the apostles, all of this stuff, complete forgery. That's what rationalism, and why would these people make it up? To control people, right? To control, to have power. 1800 years of civilization based on faith has been an illusion. Now you'll see many people that are rationalists that subscribe to this will account all the problems of the last 2,000 years. All the problems of the last 2,000 years are based on what? Religion. What's religion based on? Faith, revelation. So again, revelation is a farce, and all the problems of the last 2,000 years are basically an illusion that religion has tried to put on people. The church and what the church is asking of people hurts man's dignity. So the fact that the church would ask us to be restrained in our sexual actions outside of marriage, for instance, no sexual act outside of marriage, no contraception within marriage, no abortion, praying for your enemies, forgiving people, all of these things, that somehow affects the dignity, that we're being controlled, and that man in his reason alone isn't dignified on its own, that it needs this faith in a sense to control it. So rationalists would claim that the church somehow hurts man's dignity instead of helps man's dignity. That Christ's teachings are false and that Christ's mission is a failure. And both of these kind of go back to what we said earlier. Christ's teachings are false. It would just say that they're false because they're made up, and they're made up by his apostles or people later to use Jesus as a way to get power, right? But Jesus was just a simple man. People are saying that he is someone that he didn't claim to be, right? Making the story up. And that Christ's mission was a failure. Why would they say that? Because they would point to the fact that all failures of the last 2,000 years have been based on faithful people and religion. So that's rationalism, reason alone, which becomes very subjective, and an all-out attack against faith, an all-out attack against revelation, faith and revelation going together, and attack against the church, which is perpetuating all these falsehoods. Naturalism. Naturalism is just keeping everything on a natural level and not accepting anything spiritual or supernatural. So a few things of this. The supernatural serves no purpose. Everything we have here in the material world, natural world, is what we need. The Creator, right? God the Creator cannot suspend his natural laws. So God put in all these laws, and he was going to work within these laws. We know, of course, when he works outside of those laws, or in a different way, a supernatural way, right? That's why we call it supernatural, above nature. We call that a miracle. And miracles do happen, and the Creator can do that. Naturalism says, no, perhaps there's a God, but he is not going to do something outside of the laws of nature. There's nothing above reason. So again, going with rationalism, naturalism and rationalism are kind of like brothers and sisters, right? People taking appearances for reality. So, for instance, you didn't really see a man rise from the dead. You were hallucinating. You were weary, and you really thought in your heart that wouldn't it be nice for Jesus to rise from the dead, and so you imagined that, and so did all the other people, all the other actually hundreds of witnesses that saw him for 40 days. So it would be saying that somehow you weren't seeing reality for what it was, but under naturalism, somehow you were just mistaking reality for some type of an appearance that is not reality. So naturalism, of course, nature only, rationalism, reason only. And really, if we think about it, our faith, the faith that we have been given, and the faith that, again, we subscribe to with our intellect and our will, it does nothing. Faith is not an attack on reason. Faith is reasonable, and faith does nothing to attack nature. St. Thomas Aquinas says that grace just builds upon nature and perfects nature. So our faith, the faith that we live and the faith that we would die for, the faith that Jesus Christ came to give us, the faith that the Catholic Church has continued to uphold and stand strong for 2,000 years, and martyrs have died for, missionaries have professed, that faith is not at odds against reason, because it is reasonable, right? So faith, St. Therese talked about reason getting us so far. Reason is a good thing. We use our reason all the time. We use our intellect all the time. Our reason takes us so far, but then faith takes us the rest of the way. So if we have a 20-floor building, maybe reason will take us to the 14th floor, but the next 6 floors have to be taken by faith. And so faith takes us to a depth. Again, faith and grace and all the things that God has to offer us, that those graces, they build upon nature. They don't destroy the nature. We can still, obviously, we have material, and the spiritual builds upon that material. So we want to hold to the faith. We do want to give in to the attacks against our faith. They are reasonable. And with the gift of faith and grace, we can do so much. We can have that divine life within us and live it and be willing to die for it. Thank you for joining me for Lectio on the Go. Please take the time to visit linktoLiturgy.com, where you'll find fast, free, and faithful resources on the gospel, and also visit our online school at linktoliturgy.teachable.com. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.